Good morning and thank you for being with us. Iranian state media has now confirmed that the nation's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed on Saturday morning at the start of the war launched by the US and Israel. The confirmation came hours after Donald Trump announced the death on his Truth Social. The US president said Khamenei was one of the most evil people in history and urged Iranians to take back their country.
Well, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has vowed revenge, announcing the start of the most devastating offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic. Donald Trump has again posted on his social media site saying any retaliation will be met with a force never seen before. Our US correspondent David Blevins reports.
He dominated Iran for more than 3 decades. But Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the 86-year-old supreme leader, is gone. His death confirmed by President Trump. In a post on Truth Social, he said, "One of the most evil people in history is dead. That is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all the great Americans and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs." The president didn't share operational details, but Israeli security officials said the Ayatollah had been killed by an Israeli airstrike on his compound in Tehran. Iran denied the reports for hours, insisting he was still in command. But state media did eventually announce his death and 40 days of national mourning.
To the noble and proud people of Iran, with ultimate grief and sorrow, this is to inform you that following the barbaric attack by the criminal governments of America and the evil Zionist regime, the true example of faith, jihad and resistance, Supreme Leader of the Revolutionary Guard, Ayatollah Khamenei, achieved the blessing of martyrdom.
The United States and Israel had launched a joint combat operation. Top military and civilian leaders were their primary targets. The retaliation was swift and widespread, Iran targeting US bases like this one in Bahrain. Missiles were intercepted in the skies above Israel. In Dubai, flights were halted and people took cover as debris fell from the sky during the attack. It's a defining moment for Iran. They danced in the streets. Khamenei had wielded ultimate political and religious power in the Islamic Republic since 1989.
To the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
It's a moment of reckoning for President Trump too. He's been monitoring developments from a situation room at Mar-a-Lago, his home in Florida, knowing whatever happens next will define his presidency. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, let's go live to Jerusalem and bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons. So, Adam, day 2 of this conflict, what can you tell us?
I can tell you that the missiles are still coming in from Iran because we've just seen them in the past few minutes. You just see there a little bit of wispy smoke up in the sky. It looks like a long sort of trail coming from an airplane. Now, that was a missile interception up there. There's another sort of cloud over there. That was another one that exploded just a few minutes ago. The protocol is becoming very familiar to people across Israel. It's that your phone buzzes to say, we think there's something on the way, prepare yourself, take precautions, and then air raid sirens go off here to say that the missiles are actually imminently arriving, and then you see these interceptions. You're just hearing there actually rumbles in the distance. Those will be other interceptions in other places. I just want to show you one extraordinary example, though, of how life does go on. Over there, that crane, that orange-white crane, is moving around because somebody is actually moving that on a construction site. While war is raging in this region, I cannot think of a more precarious place to be than being up the top of that crane now. I hope that man is being well paid. So in terms of the situation in this region, well, seismically, the Iranian supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed. Not clear whether that was by Israeli or American strikes, but he was in his compound. He was killed along with his son-in-law, his daughter-in-law. Also, the Iranian defense minister has been killed, according to the state media. Also, we understand the chief of staff in the Iranian Defense Ministry has also been killed, as well as the head of the Islamic Republican Guard Corps, the incredibly, fundamentally crucial organization that oversaw the rule of fear that Khamenei used for so many decades. These are some of the most senior figures in the Iranian regime, as well, of course, as the supreme leader. So this operation yesterday to target senior figures appears to have borne an extraordinary level of success. Now, Iran is without a leader. A process will now start to appoint a new leader, but clearly this is a country that is at war, and it doesn't appear as if the result of this has been an instant move to peace. We have seen people out on the street, clearly some of them protesting about the killing of Khamenei, also many others jubilant about his death. It is very hard, bluntly, to gauge which is the greater number. You talk to one side and you'll get one answer, and you'll get another. Impossible for us to independently verify that. We know that yesterday Iran didn't just attack Israel, but also launched missiles towards the UAE. We saw that we saw the hotel in Dubai that was struck, also in Bahrain at a port, at a US base, at Qatar. So it is widespread attacks, and Iran always did talk about a potential for a regional conflict. What we know is from the very start, Israel and the United States wanted this to lead to regime change. They have now killed on day one Ali Khamenei. There is a process which will appoint his successor. It may well turn out to be somebody that he himself had handpicked. We know that on the short list that he had approved were 3 names, including the grandson of Ayatollah Khamenei, the man who preceded Khamenei. So there are those who are in place. There is a group of senior Shia clergy who will be charged with selecting that successor. 7 days of mourning in Iran, and the country is now being led by a group of 3 people, including the president. They will be taking the decisions. They will certainly want to take retribution for the killing of Khamenei and for the attacks on Iran. And I think it's hard to believe that there will be fewer missiles fired today by Iran. And bearing in mind the rhetoric of Netanyahu and Trump yesterday, it's very hard to believe that Israel and America won't retaliate or certainly take the first step, won't attack of their own course. So I don't think we're heading to a lull in this conflict anytime soon. Frankly, standing here now, you would expect more and more of these alerts and more missiles flying over the towns and cities of Israel, Iran, and quite possibly the rest of this region. We have already seen, I should say, explosions and attacks in other Gulf states.
All right, Adam, for now in Jerusalem, do appreciate that Adam Parsons, our Middle East correspondent, while our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes has joined us. Deb, morning to you. Why don't you pick up with some of what Adam was saying there about this idea of retribution coming from the Iranians? It seems for a second day they've been able to launch some missiles, at least, across the region. How much longer can they sustain that form? What do you make of their response thus far?
Well, I mean, they've They're obviously reeling from the fact they've just incurred these devastating strikes, losing the supreme leader, losing so many other senior members of the regime, especially on the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps side. The IRGC has released a statement this morning in response to the killing of Khamenei, saying that they are going to, sort of vowing the words are the most devastating offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran, saying it's going to be regret-inducing retribution. That's to be expected, those words. Whether it can be followed through with action, though, that is the gamble that the US has taken, looking at Iran's capabilities. Yes, in the past, we know that Iran has a huge arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles. It's been leading the way in cutting-edge drone technology, the Shahed drone. However, it's had to use up quite a lot of that in the last couple of years. Also, its militia, its proxy forces, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, obviously in Gaza, they have been seriously degraded with the wars with Israel. And so clearly the calculation was taken that the moment now was right to be able to take this military action without incurring a wider devastating conflict in the Middle East. And so far, I mean, Donald Trump has been quoted as saying that the response has been less than anticipated from Iran. So far, in terms of the reaction, I'm sure it is obviously absolutely terrifying for people in Israel and then across the Gulf states, having these missiles flying over their airspace and being blasted out of the sky, some of them, of course, impacting. However, the actual damage that Iran has been able to inflict militarily against the US military so far has been minimal, which really points to a degraded capability when it comes to actually being able to take those surgical strikes that we've seen the US and Israel take against the Iranians.
And we should reflect, shouldn't we, on the big news overnight that Iran has confirmed the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, which is a significant moment, isn't it, in Middle Eastern history, let alone Iran's. But it does pose big questions about what happens next.
Yeah, monumental. I mean, he must have known his days were numbered since his country and his regime was in conflict, in dispute with Donald Trump. And he can only look at Venezuela to what happened to the leader of another country that refused to comply with Donald Trump's demands. So presumably he was expecting a missile or to be captured. And a missile is exactly what's happened. And in the country, as we're hearing from Adam, it's hard to gauge the reaction at the moment, but clearly large swathes of Iran loathe the regime, have suffered under its rule. The economy is crumbling. The regime has killed thousands of its own people for daring to protest. So tears will not be shed there. And more widely, when it looks to the UK, other Western allies, they have not open. They are not going to shed tears for the death of Khamenei, but there is already clearly nervousness about what comes next in terms of the immediate crisis here in Iran. There are analysis talking about opening the Pandora's box and who knows what might come next, but also as well in terms of the dangerous precedent that this sets with the use of force without trying to get international consensus, which is what happened, you'll remember, in the run-up to the Iraq War in 2003. Obviously, that had unintended, devastating consequences in terms of how that then unfolded because there was no plan for the aftermath. Here, we have a US president who believes he can enforce his goals that he set out very clearly yesterday through military action at a distance. There is absolutely no desire on the US side to have boots on the ground, a long-term forever war under Donald Trump. But whether they can actually achieve what their goal is to establish something better, something more pliable for the US to deal with. I mean, there's no suggestion that Donald Trump is pushing for liberal democratic rule to flourish in Iran, let's face it. Then it is high risk, and that obviously has consequences both regionally and globally, especially with the utility of force, as I've just said.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that, the response that we could get from the Iranians. You mentioned Hezbollah and Hamas, of course, degraded. The Houthis have not done anything yet, and they, in previous times, have joined forces with the Iranians. Could this be an elongated process for the Iranians? Could they just be spacing out their response? But I suppose as they do that, they become targets themselves, because the Israelis and the Americans will be looking for those missile launch sites.
Yeah, I mean, the longer the time passes without evidence of this truly devastating retaliation against American targets, which clearly, if Iran is trying to defend itself, it shouldn't be launching missiles against targets in the Gulf that aren't US military.
Is that being terrorising? Do you see what I mean? Is that them sort of terrorising the region as a way of getting back at the Americans?
But that wouldn't make sense either, because they're already antagonising states that, at the very least have been semi-neutral when it comes to attacking Iran. So it's, turning the entire neighbourhood against the regime, it doesn't make much sense. More likely, it speaks to degraded military capability to take the actions that Iran wants to take. There's been claims that have been dismissed by the US military of US forces being killed. There's no evidence of that having happened yet. And you'd have thought that if Iran did have that capability, it would want to demonstrate it immediately as soon as the strikes happened. The fact that hasn't happened yet, and remember, the US, this is not a one-off attack that happened yesterday. There are waves of American and Israeli strikes that are still ongoing, and the longer they go on, the more degraded the Iranian military capability becomes, and the less capable it is, therefore, to be able to launch any kind of decisive counter.
Okay. Deborah, really interesting stuff.
Thanks,
and we are getting word all the time of strikes on both sides. Iran saying that it's going to attack Israel and other sites in the region with force. The Iranian speaker talked about Netanyahu and Trump crossing a red line and will pay for it. This is the scene in Tel Aviv. There have been alerts across Israel issued by the Israeli army. This is the Tel Aviv area, and you can see a damaged building there. We don't know the full circumstances of what's happened here, but we do know that Tel Aviv is one of the areas, at least, where sirens have been going off, warning of possible missiles.
As Adam saw, some interceptors going off across Jerusalem, and you can imagine with the Iron Dome system, that'll be happening across Israel more broadly and across the Tel Aviv area as well. But Deb, you're still with us because, look, the Iron Dome is effective, of course, but as we saw the last time that Iran fired missiles at Israel, some do get through, and we don't know the full circumstance of this, but that does look like an airstrike, doesn't it?
Yes, well, yes, it does. It does. We're obviously just looking on our screen, but it's that devastation that suggests it's more than just debris that's fallen down, and that actually there's been a missile strike. When it comes to the Iron Dome, it's incredibly effective at protecting Israeli airspace from rockets and missiles, but when it comes to multiple ballistic missiles launched simultaneously, which is what Iran is trying to do, there are reduced capabilities to be able to blast these ballistic missiles out of the sky. The US are also involved in terms of defending Israel's airspace and also their American assets more broadly in the region. But like anything, there are only finite missile interceptors as well. So both sides don't have limitless ability to maintain this kind of warfare at a distance.
And while we have got you, Deb, as well, back, I think it was in April, wasn't it, when the Iranians fired missiles at Iran, the British got involved in shooting down some of those drones. They didn't get involved in October. We've heard that there's been no use of force by the Brits so far, although planes have been in the sky. If this continues to attack, if Israel continues to be attacked, could we see a change in position from the British government, do you think?
I think the only... Well, I mean, anything's possible, right? And also when you're talking about British capability, unfortunately, you have to face the reality of the UK's limited capability when it comes to air defences. I mean, that is a woeful demonstration of the UK's hollowed-out defences anyway. The only capability that we have to blast ballistic missiles out the sky are Type 45 destroyers. Of them, we only have 6. And of them, at any one time, only 1 or 2 are available for operations. So what we can offer is limited. Yes, we have, of course, the ability to knock out cruise missiles, but again, it isn't in any way in the same league as what Israel and America has, and that is maybe why when you had that incident back in April, the UK contribution, yes, it's important that the UK is involved, but it was against drones, and it's our warplanes that are doing that. We've got more warplanes in the region. The jets were flying yesterday, we were told by the Prime Minister. But in terms of what they can actually do, would a British base be attacked? That's questionable. And I think in terms of your question, as things stand, given that the Starmer government has been very clear they've not offered support to the Americans, including the use of British bases for Americans to launch their aircraft from. That hasn't happened so far. Were a British asset to be targeted, then of course that calculation would have to change.
Deborah, thanks very much indeed. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that.
Well, as Deborah was saying there, the conflict has spread beyond Iran's borders, and more missiles have been intercepted overnight in Dubai after Iran vowed retaliation for the killing of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So let's bring in our correspondent, Sally Lockwood, who's in Dubai for us. Sally, fill us in on what's happening there then.
Yeah, it has been quite a 24 hours, Anna, and it was a very eventful night as well. The UAE has confirmed it's intercepted what they've said were hundreds of drones and missiles flying into UAE airspace. And there's been another 2 series of very loud bangs of air defence this morning. You might be able to make out behind me this rather large plume of smoke. That is Jebel Ali port area, where there's a significant build-up now of American naval assets. That was hit just before 2 o'clock this morning, quite a large explosion. Now, the official line is that it was debris, but it really is quite a significant plume of smoke that's still rising all these hours later above Dubai's skyline. And that wasn't the only area to be hit. Dubai Airport was hit last night around midnight. We all received emergency alerts on our phone, 3 emergency alerts in around the space of 10 minutes, followed by lots of loud bangs. And then shortly afterwards, a video emerging of shrapnel on a concourse at Dubai Airport. They've confirmed that it was hit and that 4 members of staff were injured. Really, really surreal scenes to experience here in the UAE at the world's busiest airport, which remains closed. Air travel is suspended again today across the region. And Abu Dhabi was also hit at their airport shortly after, apparently by an intercepted drone, but it did result in the death of 1 person. Now, you may be familiar with the iconic Burj Al Arab hotel, that 7-star hotel in the shape of a sail on Dubai's coastline. Well, that was also hit by falling debris with smoke coming out the side of it last night. Absolutely extraordinary scenes that would normally be completely unthinkable here. As I say, air travel is suspended. People here are very nervous. I was receiving messages last night of people seeking options of leaving Dubai and making their way to Northern Emirates. Some people have made their way to the Omani border and crossed into Oman. They deem it to be a safer place because Oman, of course, have been the mediators between Iran and the US in these talks. And it's one of the Gulf states that hasn't been hit in this last 24 hours of attacks by Iran. And people have been sleeping in safe rooms. I was receiving photos last night of tourists in the basements of their hotels, of local residents sleeping with their children on the floor in rooms without windows, because that emergency alert that came in at midnight, the warning was to shelter in place and to stay away from windows. It was very nerve-wracking, and certainly the air defence explosions over my house were very loud indeed, and they shook a couple of times. We've had another 2 waves of that this morning. people have been warned by the UAE authorities not to stockpile. They've been reassured by authorities that they are, in safe hands. But that hasn't stopped people panicking. And to give you an idea, at my local store this morning, there's a queue of around 200 people. Shelves are empty. People are really worried. And I think there's also a real sense here, not just among tourists who now can't get home, but also the 250,000 British citizens that live here that have chosen the UAE as their home. People don't like that sense of feeling trapped. And of course, air travel is suspended. I should say, on the official line front, the Iranian foreign minister has said that he's called his regional counterparts and has sought to clarify that Iran is simply exercising its right to self-defense here in this wave of attacks on Gulf states. And he added that it was regrettable that targets are located in friendly states, such as this one, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. They have fairly decent diplomatic relations with Iran in normal times. But the diplomatic advisor to the president of the UAE has come out and said that Tehran has crossed a red line by infringing on Gulf states' security. There's a really big difference between targeting American military assets and American air bases and targeting national infrastructure and terrorizing civilians. And certainly the UAE is saying that Tehran has crossed a red line here, and we're all really holding our breath to see how today unfolds. It feels like we're entering a new phase when it comes to security in this region, but certainly the immediate priority is for people to just stay safe today and hope that we don't see a repeat of what happened yesterday. But certainly that is the fear. We've already had 2 waves of missiles this morning. The fear is there are going to be more strikes today. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Sally, for now, stay safe in Dubai. Sally Lockwood there. And just to reiterate what Sally said, speaking to my own family members in the region as well, there is a sense of fear, an unexpected lack of security in a place like Dubai from people who've moved there. We say 250,000 Brits have moved there now, and they had to deal with, the Dubai government is saying, 100 drones being fired at them that had to be intercepted. It's something that the people living there will never have expected to have happened, and it's now the new reality, and no one at this point knows when it's going to end.
No, absolutely. Sally really painting the picture very vividly there of the nervousness in that area. Plenty more to come on the Middle East conflict after the break. We're going to be talking to the global affairs journalist and author of The Heartbeat of Iran, Tara Kangari, next.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killing suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the airdrop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references?
Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live.
They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has joined European allies in condemning Iran's attacks on Middle Eastern countries following the US-Israeli strikes. Sir Keir Starmer, the French President and the German Chancellor have urged the Iranian leadership to seek a negotiated solution, saying that ultimately the Iranian people must be allowed to determine their future.
Well, let's get the analysis now of global affairs journalist and author of the book The Heartbeat of Iran, Tara Kangaroglu. Tara, always good to speak with you. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. I think we must start with the news overnight of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei having been killed. As an Iranian, how did you react to the news?
I will put the Iranian hat on for a second. I think this is, personally, I think this is a moment that so many of us Iranians waited for because the people of Iran, including my own family, see him and saw him as the single source of repression and oppression of a country so deserving of everything that they have the potential for. And I remember my own father, when he was alive, he would say, would I still be living the day that this man is gone? But as a journalist, I think it's important to look for what's next, what the sound and voice on the ground is. We certainly are getting images and pictures from pro-regime supporters, but I can tell you easily that the majority of the Iranian public is against the Islamic regime in its entirety. And speaking to some folks in Iran, not just Tehran, but other cities this morning, they've been telling me that history is evolving and is changing, and a page in Iran's history book has turned. And overnight, people were taking the streets, dancing, quite jubilant at a time that earlier in January, mass protests were repressed brutally and vehemently by IRGC forces. So a lot is unfolding, quite a lot of movement within the regime and very little clarity on what's next.
Well, yes, and so many questions, because obviously the fear amongst those Iranians celebrating the death of Khamenei will be that he'll be replaced with someone with a very similar ethos and drive. What's your feeling about what could happen next? And do you feel that those calls to the Iranian people to rise up against the regime will be answered?
Definitely. I think right now, internally, the government is trying to figure out what's next. There are talks of putting together a committee to determine the future leader, Shorai Rahbari, a committee to essentially decide who would lead. But traditionally, the supreme leader would be picked between after a meeting between the president, the judiciary, and the Assembly of Experts. Right. Now, we have not heard from the president. I'm getting reports that the head of judiciary is also not quite well, and no word really from the Assembly of Experts.
When you say not quite well, do you think they've been killed?
I can't tell you, but my sources are saying he is not well, as Pezeshkian, the president. We have not yet heard from him. Many were anticipating that Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, might emerge. We have not yet heard from him. His wife was killed, and other members. That is confirmed. Right. Other members of Khamenei's family have been killed as well. So a lot of unknown. But back to the people, again, history has turned, and when you talk to the average Iranian, they want to move beyond the regime. Now, what that looks like, whether it requires further escalation by the United States and Israel to contain other IRGC facilities and points of power to then have the military emerge. Maybe, who knows? Also, others who I've been speaking with, sources have told me that the reformist candidates, we haven't heard from them. They have been quite choked, by the way, in the past few months. But, you know, I would say that this is a day that so many within the regime have thought about over the past few years, even though the Supreme Leader Khamenei did everything in his power to contain any form of dissent. But there are people extremely powerful, including two men that I want their names we remember in the coming days, Larijani and Ghalibaf, that hold a lot of power, and they will fight to hold this power in their hands.
And following the path of Khamenei, is there any suggestion that those within the army, within the IRGC, could actually do what Donald Trump has wanted them to do and put down their weapons and turn against the leadership of the regime?
I think everything is on the table, right? A lot of unknown, but how that happens, I think still it might be messy. A word that we got from the government as of this morning is that they're going to go full force and they're going to retaliate. Yeah. How is that going to look like?
Well, we've actually got some picture as well, I think, sorry, Anna, from Iranian State's television sort of showing the response.
Yes, the pro-regime supporters, indeed.
Yeah, and I wanted to get a sense of, from the people you've spoken to, what life is like during this incredibly febrile time with bombs raining down on Iran in multiple locations. Iran, in the meantime, retaliating with their own missiles and drones in the region. What is day-to-day life like? Are you getting an impression?
Absolutely. Yesterday, I would say, was very different than today. Yesterday, Saturday, first day of the week, people woke up going to work, life as usual, schools operating, and then suddenly the strikes. Whereas today, the government has announced a day of mourning and actually, I believe, 40 days of national mourning. But again, for the majority of the Iranian people, they're jubilant, they're happy. On the streets, you saw people, young and old, dancing last night, and maybe later we can show video of that, confirmed videos of that. But people are all standing by. They believe, when you speak with them, that what happened is worth it, is worth their suffering. Because in the words of a young woman that I spoke with during the protest, there's a sea of blood between us and the regime, and we want to move beyond this regime. Whatever it takes, we want to move beyond.
Tara, I think probably the last time we spoke, maybe the time before, we talked about Trump's call for people to rise up and perhaps the conflict within Iranians, that if they were going to achieve change, it would come as the result of a US campaign. Where are we now? That things have moved on quite so much and Khamenei is dead.
Indeed, and I think this might be Trump's moment to say, we gave you this opportunity. And I think in the speech that he gave yesterday, he was alluding to that we are creating ground so that the Iranian people can take control in their hand. But how is that possible, right? Because as we talked earlier, the arms and guns are in the hands of the IRGC and then the military. I think the question for us right now is what is going to happen to IRGC and those arms, and who's gonna create ground for people to have the power in their hands.
Tara, just before you go, actually, I just want to ask you one more thing about Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah. I think he put a video out overnight talking about what has happened and saying he's going to give the moment when he wants people to come onto the streets. At this moment now, where is the support for him? Is there support for him?
Again, he has support in Iran, strong support in Iran among a group of people, but also many who have been supporting him do so because they see no other alternative. And of course, Iran is a country of 90 million. It's not a monolithic society. I think we really need to put that in perspective. And he, some don't support him. But I was actually speaking with someone earlier, very close to the internal system. He said, Many say this is the moment for him to step in. Many believe that this is the time, if he is serious, this is the time to step in. And another woman I spoke with, she had family members killed. She said, we see him as a transitional figure, but we don't want a monarchy. We want to choose for ourselves. And she too also said, this is a time, if he's serious, he should come in and lead and move the story forward and Iran's next chapter.
Very interesting to see whether we hear from him in the hours ahead. But Tara, thanks so much for coming in. Always really interesting to get your take on how people in the country are feeling. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Go ahead.
Well, look, we're going to continue our coverage this morning of the situation in Iran. We'll have a bit more on what's been happening to some British citizens living in the Middle East as those bombs continue to rain down on Dubai.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Thanks for staying with us. With more missile strikes over the Middle East overnight, Brits living in the region are being urged by the Foreign Office to take shelter wherever they are. Well, our correspondent Emma Birchley is here with us. Emma, morning to you. So what is the advice from the Foreign Office to Brits abroad?
Well, it's to register with the UK government and to follow local advice. So if you're in Bahrain, Israel, Palestine, Qatar, UAE, take sensible precautions, stay away from military facilities because, of course, they're a real target for these Iranian missiles. And a phrase, immediately shelter in place if you're in UAE, Bahrain, Qatar and Kuwait. We know that in those countries, in Jordan too, they have all been using their air defences to intercept Iranian missiles. That obviously comes with risks for people on the ground. We know in the UAE, hundreds of drones and missiles have been intercepted. The airport in Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been targeted. 4 staff injured, actually, at Abu Dhabi. And these reports of the people hearing the air raids and running for shelter, holiday makers and residents taking to the basement or underground car parks. For those who don't have access to that, being told to go to rooms without windows. So a very scary time at the moment.
Yeah, and there'll be plenty of tourists who think, I should have gone home yesterday, I want to go home now. What's the advice about travelling?
Well, at the moment, they will have missed the boat because actually, if you look at one of those apps that show you the airspace, it's empty. People are being warned to, if they had plans, look online. So if you look on the Foreign Office website, you can click on the country and it gives you very clear advice about what travel advice there is. But we've had flights turned around mid-air, turned around on the tarmac. We know that flights over the coming days have been cancelled. I was going to give you some examples, but actually it's changing all the time. So it's just worth looking online. The airports are saying, look at your airlines, contact them. And already a lot of those airlines are saying, right, we'll give you a refund up to a certain date or you can swap your flight. They're being very understanding. But that date that those changes can be made up to is changing all the time because quite clearly we're really in the thick of it at the moment. And I think we have to bear in mind, even when things do calm down, what you end up is knock-on delays. So certainly lots of disruption for people intending to travel.
I mean, 250,000 living there, is that right? We don't know how many are there on...
240,000, yeah, in the United Arab Emirates.
So, I mean, in other circumstances where there have been turmoil abroad and it's gone on, the UK government have tried to get people out. I mean, in this instance, it's just going to be... I mean, that would be a near impossible task, wouldn't it, with so many people?
Yeah, I think people are having to hunker down and get on with it. Clearly, it's a huge concern that the airports have been targeted. Yeah, no one going anywhere at the moment.
OK, Emma, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. One story in town on the newspapers, the Sunday papers. Once again, we're going to be going through them with Lettice Bromowski from the Daily Mail and political commentator Matthew Stadlen next.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow, but shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
All right, let's take a look now through the morning's newspapers. We're joined once again by Lettice Bromowski from the Daily Mail and Matthew Stadlen, political commentator.
Hi there.
And journalist. Matthew, Lettice, thanks so much for being with us. Haven't got loads of time, so let's focus in, as we've been doing for the past few minutes, on those British citizens living abroad. The advice now from the Foreign Office is to register if you are in one of those Gulf states that is the subject to these strikes. What sense of the paper's got of what's happening to those Gulf
states? Front page of the Sunday Mirror, Brits told to find shelters, revenge strikes rock the region. I'm looking at the front page of the Star, Brits, Dubai, missile terror. And this is very close to home for so many of us, because there are 240,000 Brits, I think we're told, living in Dubai. I've got a very good friend who's living in Dubai whose building was rocked yesterday by the missile strike or strikes. And so this is a moment of real concern for Brits living in the Middle East and also for friends and families back home.
Yeah, plenty of people go travelling to the Middle East as well. And bringing in the Brit angle a bit further as well, what do you make of the Prime Minister's response to this extraordinary wave of action by the US and Israel?
I mean, I think he's towing a sort of tightrope at the moment, because obviously he's being squeezed from both sides of the political spectrum. He's got on the left side, he's got the Greens and your party saying that this is illegal and that we should condemn what the US has done. And on the other side, you've got Conservatives and Reform coming out and saying we stand by the US and they've done the right thing because Iran can't ever have nuclear weapons. So he's clearly trying to balance the books in that sense. And right now we're in a pretty complicated situation, because we also know conversations have been going on between Starmer and Donald Trump. They had a phone conversation last night where we didn't get much out of that over what happened. But Trump is clearly annoyed at Starmer because he didn't allow him to launch the preemptive strikes from the US bases that we have. I think that was the right decision at the time, because ultimately that would have put the UK in a much more complicated situation as this sort of war progresses.
Interesting legal questions on this, of course, because even if the government's position is that it could have been illegal to get involved in preemptive strikes against Iran, what happens now that Iran has sent missiles into the Middle East and against American targets, when America is a NATO ally of us, a huge ally of the United Kingdom? Do we then feel we are entitled to go in? As you said, there are plenty of people on the right of British politics who think we should already have been involved.
Yeah, well, that's a justification given by Rishi Sunak back in April 2024, when he helped defend Israel from those Iranian missiles, and it was doing it in the British interest. That's the defence he gave us to make it legal under international law to do that. Do you think this is going to become a political wedge issue here?
I think it already has. Right. Nigel Farage has leapt in, Kemi Badenoch has made her position clear. So inevitably, in the world in which we live, with social media dominating the narrative at such a fast pace, anything that happens internationally becomes a domestic political issue.
Let's turn to the country itself. The Express, on its inside pages, talks about protests and celebrations, they say across the world, and they have pictures illustrating just that. It's such a huge decision to go to war on Iran and to take out the leader as well. It's going to prompt a big reaction.
Yeah, I mean, let's make no mistake, the Iranian regime is incredibly oppressive. It is brutal. There's not going to be much love lost over the fact that their supreme leader has been killed for many people. I mean, we only have to look back last month in the way that they handled the protests that they had in the country. thousands were killed. There were horrific stories coming out about rapes that were going on of women, about making families pay to get the bodies back of those who had been killed. This is a horrific regime, so it's no wonder that people are celebrating. But really what we've got to look to is what comes next. Because it's been so oppressive, there is no viable opposition within the country. It's also been reported that his son was also killed in the strikes. You also mentioned earlier that someone else has been killed in the strikes. We're not fully sure what other leadership has been killed in the strikes that happened yesterday. So right now, it'll be unpacking that and seeing who's left, who's going to fill this power vacuum.
They do, we're told, though, have contingency plans. You know, maybe even three people deep for each significant position.
Well, the threat on Iran has been around for some time. There was their 12-day war back last summer, so lots of plans will have been made.
And what does Trump actually want? I mean, he joked, he said he was only slightly being sarcastic yesterday or last night, saying that they'll be asking him who he wants to be in charge.
But he wants people to rise up, doesn't he? That's what he's called on.
That's what he's calling for, but is that possible? And who enters that vacuum? And will it descend? Could it descend into all-out civil war? Because we know that as well as huge numbers of people who despise the evil regime, there are also millions of people who are supportive of it. And the Ayatollah was a very significant religious figure, let's not forget, as well as the leader of Iran and as well as a very, very bad man.
As Tara was saying, they have the weapons as well.
But in his speech yesterday, he's sort of created a bit of space. As you said, he's calling for them to rise up, but in doing so, he's saying, now's your time, take over your country as you see fit. But as you said, it's such a fractured country as it is that it's going to be difficult for them to rise up without a clear leader who will take on that opposition role.
And also, not totally clear the extent to which Donald Trump will stay committed to this conflict.
And that is very dependent, one thinks, on his domestic position and the fragmentation, arguably, within the MAGA group, the MAGA support base, some who voted for him precisely, or at least partly, because he was going to be the anti-war president.
Indeed.
Matthew, great to have you with us this morning.
Thanks
so much.
Indeed. Thank you.
Morning to you. And stay with us, plenty more to come in the next hour.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Iranian state media confirms the country's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is dead.
Air raid sirens sound in Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel as Iran vows revenge, threatening to launch its most intensive offensive so far.
Israel says it's launched a new wave of strikes this morning following the joint attacks with the US yesterday.
Well, we are going to bring you the very latest on the Iran war as it enters day 2.
Plus, we'll be live in Dubai, where more missiles have been intercepted overnight.
The British government gives us their first reaction to Khamenei's death. The Defence Secretary John Healey is here at 8:30.
Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us here today. Iranian state media has now confirmed the nation's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed on Saturday morning at the start of the war launched by the US and Israel. That confirmation came hours after Donald Trump announced the death on Truth Social. The US president said Khamenei was one of the most evil people in history, and he urged Iranians to take back their country.
Well, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has vowed revenge, announcing the start of what they call the most devastating offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic. Trump has again posted on his social media site saying any retaliation will be met with a force never seen before. Our US correspondent David Blevins has our first report.
He dominated Iran for more than 3 decades. But Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the 86-year-old supreme leader, is gone. His death confirmed by President Trump. In a post on Truth Social, he said, "One of the most evil people in history is dead. That is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all the great Americans and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs." The president didn't share operational details, but Israeli security officials said the Ayatollah had been killed by an Israeli airstrike on his compound in Tehran. Iran denied the reports for hours, insisting he was still in command. But state media did eventually announce his death and 40 days of national mourning.
To the noble and proud people of Iran, with ultimate grief and sorrow, this is to inform you that following the barbaric attack by the criminal governments of America and the evil Zionist regime, the true example of faith, jihad and resistance, Supreme Leader of the Revolutionary Guard, Ayatollah Khamenei, achieved the blessing of martyrdom.
The United States and Israel had launched a joint combat operation. Top military and civilian leaders were their primary targets. The retaliation was swift and widespread, Iran targeting US bases like this one in Bahrain. Missiles were intercepted in the skies above Israel. In Dubai, flights were halted and people took cover as debris fell from the sky during the attack. It's a defining moment for Iran. They danced in the streets. Khamenei had wielded ultimate political and religious power in the Islamic Republic since 1989.
To the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
It's a moment of reckoning for President Trump, too. He's been monitoring developments from a Situation Room at Mar-a-Lago, his home in Florida. Knowing whatever happens next will define his presidency. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Right, let's go to Israel now, bringing our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons in Jerusalem. Adam, thanks for being with us. Air raid sirens in Tel Aviv, other parts of Israel. What's the situation where you are?
At the moment, we've just, in the past couple of minutes, received an alert comes through on your phones telling you to be prepared for another wave of missiles coming towards Israel. So we're effectively, like a lot of other people, waiting to hear air raid sirens if they happen here, looking up to the skies to see what might happen here in Jerusalem. We've already seen a number of missiles in the skies above here, interceptions as well. And there has been damage in Israel because of missile strikes, not the actual missiles themselves. This is what happens is the missile is very, very high up coming from Iran. It is intercepted by something from probably the Arrow 3 system, the David Sling system here in Israel, and the debris falls down to earth. It has caused damage here in Jerusalem, and that site over there, over in the West Bank, we've seen lots of debris falling. Also in Tel Aviv, where it would appear that a considerable chunk of debris has fallen and damaged certainly at least one building very significantly there. So there have been injuries. There is a report of a fatality as well here in Israel because of that. The Israelis adamant that there hasn't been any direct missile strikes on Israeli territory so far. But I think there is an expectation that this is going to be another day of significant military conflict between Iran and Israel and the wider region. We've also seen, haven't we, in Qatar and Bahrain and Dubai, attacks from Iran there. Those are likely to continue today. We've seen more smoke coming up in the UAE over the course of the morning. So I think there is very little chance that we're going to see a lull. Just to recap, what's happened in Iran is the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed. That has been confirmed by Iranian state media. The defense minister has also been killed. So has the chief of staff. So has the head of the Islamic Republican Guard, which is the organization that effectively and very effectively controlled much of the mood of the Iranian people through a network of secrecy informants, rather like, I'd say, the Stasi, let's say, in Romania or similar secret groups across Europe. That Islamic Republican Guard, though, is still intact, and its new leaders are vowing revenge. Statements from Iran coming out this morning, really saying that Israel and the United States have crossed a red line, and that Iran will seek vengeance against them. So this is still a very volatile, precarious moment for this region. We know that President Trump, that Benjamin Netanyahu here in Israel, both see this as an opportunity to foment regime change. They want people to get out on the streets. Certainly we have seen that. It's very, very hard to gauge whether the people out on the streets are overwhelmingly celebrating the death of Khamenei or whether they are protesting against America and Israel. Certainly both of those things have happened. We don't know the balance of what those are. I'm just going to point you up to that little wispy trail of cloud you can see up there. Is that's a new interception of a missile that has happened while I've been talking to you. Interestingly, we didn't actually get an air raid siren going off for that one, and that has been something that I've noticed, is that the sirens don't always go off as these interceptions are happening. It is not a flawless system, but so far, according to the Israelis, it has worked very effectively at stopping any of the missile strikes coming in. The bottom line is, I think it's going to be another busy day. It's going to be another day when Iran fires a lot of missiles. You can hear that thumps. Those thumps you can hear there, those are more interceptions coming from over that direction. Just as a bit of geography, Tehran is over that way. You heard that's a lot of interceptions that are coming from over there. So that's another wave Iranian missiles that are coming over here. Now, it's worth saying these are not missiles being fired necessarily at Jerusalem. In fact, they're very unlikely to be fired at Jerusalem, but many of them pass over here on the way to Tel Aviv or other targets selected by the Iranians. Still no air raid siren here. It's going to be a day like that. I think we're going to see more missiles coming in, and obviously American and Israeli firepower going in the other direction. Yesterday, Israel launched something like 200 fighter jets, the biggest aerial assault that Israel has ever conducted. And of course, we know the Americans have 2 carrier groups here, huge build-up of military strength. Okay. And at the time, we may remember we said, is this a bluff? It wasn't. This is a huge military operation which has resulted already in the seismic killing of the Iranian supreme leader.
Adam, thanks very much indeed. And I know you'll keep us up to date with all the developments from Jerusalem throughout the day. But right now, we want to take you to Karachi. These are the latest pictures from the port city in Pakistan, where clashes are underway with police after hundreds of protesters stormed the US consulate there in Karachi. It's turned violent. Just a few moments ago, we saw pictures of protesters throwing stones at the police on the ground there. These are the latest pictures that the cameraman keeps having to move away when the protesters get closer. But the authorities are saying that at least 6 people have been killed in those clashes, and they're also talking about at least 8 people wounded. Yeah, absolutely. These are live pictures that we've got now for you, which shows that the situation in Karachi remains very tense and volatile. You can see volleys of tear gas dispersal agents being fired by the police to try and clear these crowds who have, the reporting suggests, tried to storm the US consulate in Pakistan. The reporting from the AP says 6 have been killed as Shiites stormed the US consulate. Of course, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei of Iran was a Shiite leader for the 90 million Iranian citizens, and the Shiite religious sect of Islam approximates to about 200 to 250 Muslims around the world. Significant populations in Iran, of course, Iraq, Azerbaijan, as well as we're seeing here in Pakistan, Bahrain and other nations. This will be in response, of course, to the killing of the Ayatollah, and will lead to concern from many other nations that have significant Shia populations. Yeah, so we're going to keep a close eye on what's going on there in Pakistan, and we'll keep you up to date. In the meantime, though, let's reflect on day 2 of the conflict in Iran. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has joined us. Hi there, Deborah. Get us up to date with what you make of Iran's retaliation. Of course, yesterday we got the announcement from Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu that they'd launched these strikes on Iran. Iran vowed to retaliate. What do you make of their response so far?
Yes, and Iran knew very well that there was this threat of American military action, because there was this very large armada, as Donald Trump called it, that was building up around the country. And overtly, Donald Trump was talking about military strikes. And yes, there was diplomacy, but there was clearly that military threat. And so the Iranian regime had plenty of time to assemble what weapons they would use to retaliate. And they know full well where the targets are, because they can see them. And I think that the response that we've seen so far, and Donald Trump himself has been quoted as saying it was less than anticipated, while absolutely terrifying for people across Israel and across the Gulf states, which is where these Iranian missiles and drones have been launched towards, they haven't managed to inflict any real consequential damage, as far as we know, against the US military or the Israeli military too, which clearly would have been is the target of their operations. And you've had a statement from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in the wake of Khamenei's killing, vowing the largest offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic. And so we wait to see what that looks like. But you have to remember that this operation, and I can remember when Donald Trump was his first term as president, there was that brinksmanship and that concern that the US would go to war with Iran over its nuclear ambitions back then when Donald Trump ripped up the nuclear deal that had been signed under Obama. And at that time, I was in the region and there was real concern about the huge arsenal of ballistic and cruise missiles that Iran has and its powerful proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, of course, in Gaza, and as you were saying as well, the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shia militia groups in Iraq too, which was a powerful deterrent and really did feed into the calculations when it came to both Israel and the US thinking about directly targeting Iran. What we've seen since 2023 are repeated attacks by Israel targeting Iran's air defense capabilities, its early warning systems to be able to detect incoming missiles, and crucially, its launch capability. And so now it really comes to the test as to whether or not Iran can inflict meaningful damage.
All right, Deb, really appreciate your reporting. We'll have more analysis from you, I'm sure, throughout the day here on Sky News. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's go to Dubai now, where our correspondent Sally Lockwood is standing by. And Sally, for the past 24 hours or so now, mass concern of the number of missiles and drones launched towards the UAE. Tell us the latest situation now. We can see smoke still rising on the horizon behind you.
Yeah, that's right, Kamali. The UAE's confirmed hundreds of missiles and drones have been fired into UAE airspace from Iran in the last 24 hours. They've been, on the large part, successfully intercepted by air defense systems. And you can see that plume of smoke behind me that's rising from the Jebel Ali port area of Dubai, where American naval assets have gathered in recent weeks after that military build-up with Donald Trump sending that armada, as he called it, here to the region. Well, that was struck just before 2 o'clock this morning. Quite a large explosion of flames coming up into the sky. And it's still smoking now all these hours later. Absolutely surreal scenes here on a Sunday morning in Dubai. But it's not the only area that was hit last night. We received emergency alerts on our phone around midnight. It was the first time that we received them yesterday. Extremely loud alarms blaring on our phones. It blared 3 times in the space of 10 minutes with an emergency alert warning people to shelter in place and to stay away from windows. And then came the sound of very loud bangs in the sky, a wave of 2 sets of missiles we believe were sent into UAE airspace because there was a succession of bangs twice around the same time. And then news began to emerge that Dubai International Airport had been hit. Videos circulating of large bits of debris on an airport concourse, absolutely unthinkable scenes at the world's busiest airport, which remains closed. Air travel is suspended across the region. And then Abu Dhabi airport was hit shortly after that, and that resulted in the death of an individual, a second death in Abu Dhabi in the last 24 hours following these strikes, and 2 more people were injured by falling debris in their gardens in civilian residential areas. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. And I should say that it does feel that there is such a tense atmosphere here. People are very anxious. Residents' WhatsApp groups are absolutely on fire with people concerned. Some were sheltering in basements overnight. Some people were sleeping in corridors and bathrooms to avoid windows. I can hear jets flying overhead at the moment, and we've had 2 series of loud bangs just this morning, and there have been loud bangs heard in Abu Dhabi today already as well. And of course, there was those scenes in Dubai's iconic Palm, that luxury beachfront area last night, the Fairmont Hotel on fire after what we believe was either falling debris or an intercepted drone hit the front of the hotel. We saw the kind of damage this morning. There was a car with blown out windows outside on the road. It appears they're turning people away. I feel like people are very nervous. The roads are very quiet here today. People are staying at home. We've had an update from the British ambassador to the UAE. He is urging British nationals to shelter in place and to seek official advice for travel. There are around 250,000 British nationals living here, but there's also a large number who come here on holiday, of which many are now very worried about how and when they'll be able to get home. I was receiving messages last night from people who were trying to make their way to the Omani border. Oman, of course, has been the chief mediator between Iran and the US in these talks, in these diplomatic efforts ahead of this war which broke out yesterday. And Oman wasn't hit yesterday, but we're now receiving reports that a port in Oman has also been struck today. The whole thing just feels very, very uncertain and unpredictable. And when it comes to the official lines here, well, the Iranian foreign minister has said that Iran reserves the right to self-defense. But the UAE's diplomatic advisor to the president has said that Tehran has crossed a line here by infringing on Gulf states' security, and certainly we'll have to see what today holds. But people generally are sheltering in place, feeling very nervous, a lot of concern that we're going to see more strikes again today, like we saw in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, so many questions about the days ahead. But Sally, thank you very much indeed for filling us in of the atmosphere and the mood there now. Thank you, Sally. Well, let's bring in Sean Bell now to reflect on some of what has been going on over the last few days. And Sean, I just noticed that the IDF, the Israeli Defence Forces, have just put out a statement talking about how the Ayatollah was killed yesterday. They go into a little bit of detail, talking about a precise, large-scale operation while he was in the central compound in the heart of Tehran. So quite interesting detail coming out. But the question is, I guess, that now that he has indeed been killed, what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that very point, we spoke yesterday and there was lots of bangs and crashes in Tehran. And I said, I don't think this will be the first thing that happens. You roll back air defences. We just haven't heard about that stuff yet. But it was also weird because it was all happening in daylight. And part of that was the fact that it was inevitable that the whole operation was the Israelis were focused on the leadership, whereas the Americans were focused on the hardware. And what evident that Iranian movement, suddenly the Israelis went, we've got them, we know where they are, we've got to go now. And all of a sudden, that's what happened. And it does seem, inevitably, Israeli intelligence has been phenomenally effective. I think what happens now is, I was half expecting the end of yesterday, when we sort of got hints that the Ayatollah was dead, that the US president would stand up and just go, we've achieved our objective. We have, because ultimately, the longer this goes on, the more difficult it is for President Trump.
But he did lay out various aims, didn't he, including annihilating the army, taking out all of Iran's missiles and completely preventing the capability of Iran to ever develop nuclear weapons.
Yes, I know he said that, but as a military guy, you're entering into a months, potentially years-long campaign if you do that. With the presidential midterms coming up and stuff like that, nobody believes he's got the appetite for that. Part of this is rhetoric and threats. We can do what we like, and this is what you're going to be faced. But the bottom line is President Trump needs an off-ramp out of this. And I thought that now that the Ayatollahs, and it may well be that they'll see what Iran does now, whether they continue the war, in which case America will be obliged to keep striking stuff. They will have a master target list as long as you're armed. They will not be short of targets. The challenge is, how long do you continue pummeling them when the impact that has on Trump's political standing back at home?
Sure, we're going to hear from the Defence Secretary, John Healey, in a few minutes when he's on the show with Trevor. And I'm sure he will be asked about the legality of this. Britain's involvement, which we understand has been very minimal. Planes have been in the sky. What's your sense, as a person who used to deal in the legality of war, what we've seen over the past couple of days?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? First of all, I mean, I've been asked several times about the whole British involvement and including some very animated audience that are saying we should be jumping to bed with President Trump, we should be supporting them. Two things, one of which is, at the moment, we still subscribe to international law, and at the moment there's no discrimination between the country carrying out the act and somebody supporting them. You're both equally culpable. So if we were to get involved in supporting it, Iran would justifiably be able to fire missiles at us. Last I knew, you know, the Iraqi missiles have the range to get to the UK. They don't have the range to get to America. So we would be a target, and we have absolutely no defence against ballistic missiles. Yes, we've got a couple of ships that have got little point area defence. So we could be sat here on the outskirts of London, and we would be defenceless against missile attack coming in. So I am really clear at the moment. This is an American act. He hasn't even made the case why it's legal. He hasn't gone to Congress. I think, quite rightly, we should be sitting there looking after our own national interests, and that's what the Royal Air Force assets are doing today, is flying to make sure we don't get caught up in it.
And what are the implications of carrying out action when there are questions about the legality? What message do you think that potentially sends to others in the world?
Well, I mean, I've lived my whole military career in a rules-based order. When at the end of the Second World War, 70 million people died, and there was a view we must stop that ever happening again. And institutions like NATO, the United Nations, International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice, everybody sort of believed that we needed to have some framework within which we could operate and talk. But increasingly over the years, that has become less and less credible. We've now had the United Nations Security Council with Russia on it, yet they've invaded another country in complete contravention. And America's largely moving away from all of that. And I think that we are seeing the end of those rules-based order. The worry is that where does that leave us? It's a major powers, with America looking after the West, China looking after the East, and famously the Middle Earth is now become a fight between Russia and Europe. And as Canadian minister said very famously, in these world of major powers, you're either at the table or you're on the menu. And it feels like we're on the menu at the moment.
Can you ever get some of that back? Just sort of philosophical final thought. It's a long way away from us now, that rules-based order. Can it be brought back with, with leadership in nations like the United States and in Europe that want to see those countries coming together?
My instinct says that that would be folly to look backwards, and I think the challenge now is to look forwards, is to go, what does the future hold? We are an island nation. We used to run an empire. We've now left the European Union. But actually, individually, we're vulnerable. Collectively, we're incredibly powerful. And I think we've got to find a way. We're not the United States of Europe, but we've got to find a way militarily of operating much more effectively together. And I think that needs to be a major focus, an urgent focus for the government.
Sure, appreciate it.
Really interesting. And, Sean, thanks very much indeed. I'm sure lots of those themes will come up in Trevor's show, which comes up next. As you were just saying just a short while ago, the Defence Secretary is on Trevor's show, John Healey. Really interesting to hear what he has to say about the US-Israeli action on Iran.
Yeah, do stay with us. Trevor's up next, and we'll see you again in a few days' time.